Trigger warning, this podcast episode contains discussions of emotional, physical, and psychological abuse. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Emotional Abuse is Real. I'm your host, Sarene Leeds, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm also so excited to share today's episode with you. But as always, I have a couple of announcements. Emotional Abuse is Real still needs your support, and there are several ways you can do that. First of all, if you're a listener and you've been mulling over sharing your story, please don't hesitate to reach out via Instagram at Sarene Leeds Writes. That's SareneLeedsWrites, or via our new Facebook page titled Emotional Abuse is Real. You can also reach me via email. My email address is hello@sereneleads.com. A reminder that anonymous guests are always welcome. Also, if you are a mental health professional and would like to offer your clinical insights, I would love to feature you on the podcast as well. Another way you can support Emotional Abuse is Real is by heading over to Apple Podcasts and both leaving a rating and writing a review. The more reviews we get, the easier it is for people to find this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, you can support the podcast by donating to our Buy Me a Coffee page, which I've linked in the show notes. As I've said before, this is a one-woman operation, and your donations help fund the podcast's production costs. On today's episode, I'll be chatting with Sadie Mayhew. Sadie and I met while graduate students in NYU's Masters in Professional Writing program, and I could not be more honored that she agreed to come on the podcast to tell her story. It's a harrowing one. I truly do hope that after hearing Sadie's emotional abuse experience, that others who feel trapped in their own toxic relationships will find a way to come forward, just as Sadie has bravely done. But she'll be the first to tell you how hard that can be. Like me, however, Sadie strongly believes in the importance of storytelling and story sharing when it comes to emotional abuse. And that's why she is such a welcome guest on Emotional Abuse is Real. My final reminder before we get into the episode is please know that I understand the content on this podcast may be difficult for many of you. I've spoken to several people who want to listen to this podcast and who do want to share their stories, but they just don't feel ready to do either yet. I'm here to tell you that I completely understand your decision. As I've done on previous episodes, I am more than happy to narrate your story if you don't feel comfortable appearing on the podcast. Also, please know that it's taken me nearly a decade after my own emotional abuse experience to be able to talk about it so openly. I'm always happy to chat with you over Instagram DM, the podcast Facebook page, or via email. I'm at Sarene Leeds Writes on Instagram and hello@sereneleads.com if you want to shoot me an email. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Sadie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Sadie Mayhew.
Well, Sadie, as I always do on the podcast, the floor is yours. I'd love to hear your emotional abuse story.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the platform too, because I know that it's not easy for a lot of people to talk about.
Exactly.
And I have been in a place where it was not easy to talk about and I wanted to just kind of forget about it. But
Sure.
I'm in this new stage of my life where, with all the research I've done, I feel like, if you have the opportunity to speak about it, it might actually help people because people that have spoken about it have helped me. So now I'm kind of wanting to be a part of that.
Absolutely. That is exactly the point of this podcast. So you are a perfect guest.
Thank you. No, I'm really happy to be here to share my story. But the big thing of why I wanted to share my story is to help prevent, stuff from happening for people.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with ADHD and I'm neurodivergent, so I'm kind of on the spectrum after my emotional abuse. So, now I'm going back and trying to figure out how did I get myself in this situation? And a lot of it had to do with just my, being naive and ignorant because I was undiagnosed and I didn't know the warning signs. And now they're very obvious to me, and I see with other people, and it's like, oh, but there are a lot of people who go undiagnosed, especially women. Like studies show that you aren't diagnosed with ADHD until anywhere between 25 to 45 is the average range. So symptoms go overlooked when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So.
I have a friend who is almost 40 and I think her diagnosis is pretty recent.
Yeah. I mean, my diagnosis helped my mother get diagnosed.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, she kind of knew, but it was not, for sure. And so it helped.
And I also just, I want to reiterate, I've said it before on the podcast, my daughter has been diagnosed with ADHD. So, so it's a big part of my life as well.
No, absolutely. And it's being a parent too, I don't blame my parents for, this happening or anything.
Sure.
They didn't know. But the warning signs were there. And from an outside perspective, I think it's good to know, the signs of a narcissist, an abuser before it happens. Because now I'm very aware of it. Now I can have normal relationships, and I've had 2 very healthy relationships since.
Right.
And I know what to look for. It's just something that I had to study, unfortunately experience. And I really I would never ever wish it on anyone to go through, but it happened for a reason. So here I am.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, starting the way it started was, I was 17. I was still in high school. I had never been in a relationship before. I had never dated anyone before, but it was definitely a time where I was maturing. I was thinking about going to college. I was really excited. I wanted to be in a relationship. My friends were. And I was preyed on by a 21-year-old guy. And at the time, that's a huge age difference. I was still in high school. He was 21. He can drink. He was smoking. He didn't go to college, but was at that age to be out of it. Just.
I had a thing with a 21-year-old when I was 17. I'm getting a lot of memories. Yeah.
Oh no. When I tell this, it's actually very unfortunate how many people are like, oh, I had the same situation happen to me. I'm like, and if it happens so often, it can also be normalized because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I did it too. And, fortunately, if it wasn't bad consequences, you kind of just start to think it's normal, but it's not. No. It's no one's fault, especially I was a child and.
Yeah. I am very grateful that I did not sleep with that 21-year-old, which I'm really grateful for. Yeah. But still, when I think back, it's just ooh, that's weird.
Yeah. No, I mean, anything, even just talking, even if it's not even in person, if it's online too, it's just it's not okay.
No.
Yeah. And I think we are getting to a place where the more people are talking about it, the more aware we're getting. And it's, I don't know. I have hope.
Yeah.
We can avoid this.
Totally.
But yeah, going forward, the signs were there. All the red flags were there from the beginning. He told me he loved me on the 4th meeting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was very early.
Love bombing.
Exactly. And I didn't know what love bombing was. I didn't know what trauma bonding was. He trauma dumped on me pretty much right away. But was very quiet, very reserved. And I thought I kind of viewed him as a wounded animal that was sensitive and oh, I can care for him. Red flag. But the trauma dumping was I can't speak. I'm tongue tied.
It's
Manipulation.
okay. Yes.
It was a manipulation tactic to get me to trust him.
Sure.
And I just saw that as like, oh, he really trusts me. He thought I was really mature for my age, but I was very naive. I was very easy prey. I was extremely insecure. Yeah. And not knowing that I had ADHD then, but now knowing now, especially women with ADHD, but anyone with ADHD likes to hyperfixate on things.
Yes, they do.
So I was hyperfixating on him and this new experience. It was thrilling. It was exciting. The attention was great. And I wanted to reciprocate. I wanted to give it back. So like I was feeling it and he was feeling it. And it was just like snowballing really quickly. And even though I was just thinking, this is my first relationship, it's going to be like a summer fling. That's kind of what it's going to be. I never had any intention to stay with him. It got very deep very quickly. And when I try to like start to back out a little bit and the hyperfixation was kind of dying down a little bit for me.
Yeah.
That's when the abuse really started because, started threatening to kill himself. How could you leave me? Blaming me, saying horrible things about me that beyond belief. And it's just like, I was brainwashed and it continued and then like it just kept going for years. And it wasn't until like 3 years into it that I kind of woke up and I was like, I have to get out. But I was in it for 4.5 years. So it was a really long time of that. And, being out of it, I was like, oh, I could have gone out sooner, but I just didn't know.
Right. Were you guys living together?
Basically, yeah. So like I moved, I went to high school in San Diego and I went back. I grew up in LA and I went back to LA that fall to go to community college. And I was living on my own for a short time. And he was still in San Diego and I would have to drive back like every single day to see him. And then eventually he forced me to move in with him. And he was living with his parents and I moved into his bedroom pretty much. And I stayed there for those 4.5 years.
Wow. Okay.
It was bad.
That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like I completely lost sight of myself. Had no friends. I wasn't talking to my family anymore. He completely, disconnected, which is like, a lot of people unfortunately go through this at the time. Here's another thing though, at the time, I was very ignorant. I thought I was the only one experiencing something like that. The abuse was so bad. I could not fathom that it would happen to other people. And then, later I started finding other stories and stuff, which helped me get out. So that's why I think it's good to speak on it. But it's like, I really thought it was only me. It's just so bad.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because this kind of abuse is so nuanced, we do have to speak out about it because no one takes it seriously. I've said this on the podcast before. I mean, when I had my experience at Rolling Stone, everyone was just like, it was very dismissive. They didn't think this was a big deal at all. Like just develop it. I kept being told to develop a thicker skin. I'm like, no. So, yeah. All right. So, so that was your living situation for 4 years. So, can you go more into detail about what that was like?
Yeah. It was insane.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go into detail. I'm just like trying to recollect a little bit.
Sure.
I can call it a relationship, but really I was just trapped. Eventually he stopped seeing me as a girlfriend and as this person. Like that connection wasn't there. I was just like this person, not even. He stopped treating me like one. He stopped calling me like my name, called me horrible things, wouldn't allow me to dress. Normally I could only wear like t-shirts, sweatpants, whatever. I couldn't wear clothes or makeup or brush my hair. He was always trying to cut my hair off.
Oh my God.
It's like little things trying to just
Control
take my
you.
identity. Absolutely. It was
Yeah.
a controlling tactic.
Yeah.
Force fed me. Like I had to eat a lot. Just, weird things.
Yeah. This goes beyond emotional abuse, though.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It was a lot of physical abuse, is verbal abuse,
Yeah.
psychological abuse.
Yeah.
But the emotional abuse was just there, and it always starts off that way. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't
Hmm.
just immediately start off with someone physically abusing you. And I don't want
Yeah.
people to think that that's the only type of abuse there is, because it's not. And
Exactly.
like your show explains it perfectly. Like it can
Yeah.
be gradual. Like it happened to me. It seemed like it just kind of escalated, like
Hmm.
took off really quickly.
Hmm.
It can happen over years. It can happen
Hmm.
over, time if you grew up with it and it's from parents. That wasn't me. That wasn't my case, but I'm saying it could.
Yeah.
It can like train you, and then you can get into it with someone else because you think that behavior is normal, and it can lead to physical abuse. But yeah, it was just a lot of things that he said to me, and it completely brainwashed me. It altered
Hmm.
my brain chemistry
Yeah.
completely. Just everything that he said, and you say it so much that you begin to believe it,
Hmm. Hmm.
about
Hmm.
myself, about my family, and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the emotional abuse was worse than the physical abuse, because the physical abuse I could like turn off. I could
Right.
kind of black out and go
Mm.
away. And that's why it's like hard for me to remember. Like I know it was really bad, but my brain has kind of wiped it. But I remember the
Yeah.
way that I felt
Okay.
when
Yeah.
he, told me things, or the way that I felt about myself. And that was what was really the long lasting effect
Okay.
of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can see that, how, it's easier to block out the physical, but the words stay with you. When I was growing up, I was always told like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And that's bullshit. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like like a lot of people, I experienced bullying when I was a kid too. And it's like,
Sure.
some of that still lasts with me. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I remember what they said to me. But at the end of the day, I am very sure of myself now. I'm very proud of where I've been. Like, another huge thing was he did not want me to have an education. He did not want me to have a college education at all. He did not believe
Oh.
that women should be educated.
Okay.
I mean, it's just the truth. And
Wow.
I did it online. I got my bachelor's degree online. And that was a whole another obstacle. Like I was trying to keep it a secret from him.
Oh,
That didn't work out. That he found out. I wasn't allowed to talk to any male classmates. It was like one of those things. But I did it, and I
oh
finished
my
my
God.
bachelor's degree after it. I
Yeah.
got into my dream school. I went to grad school at NYU. I live in New York now. I have a master's degree. I'm like, you know what? Some of it was like out of spite, because I was like, watch me. But
I love that.
yeah,
Good
no,
for
I feel
you.
great. So I feel very above the situation. It does not define me in any
Yeah.
way. I have a completely different life now. Like a lot can happen quickly. So it's
Yeah.
not like I carry this in my day-to-day life, but there was a part of me that was like, I would kind of want to block it out. I want to move on, but now I'm just like, I need to just kind of face it head on.
Right. So, okay. So, I definitely want to hear about how you decided to finally leave and move to New York. And from there, what did you do to heal yourself, like therapy, things like that?
Yeah. Um, when I'm going to start off when I decided to leave
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a year before I actually did. Um,
Yeah.
I felt like I was gonna die in that relationship. It was gonna happen, or
Hmm. Hmm.
I didn't want to die. So it was like,
No.
it's a hard thing to say, but I was like, I hit bottom.
Yeah.
death was bottom. It was either that or I have to find a way out. And I
Hmm.
was going to fight my way out.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to start with, I could have just run away. I could have gone to the police or whatever, but I didn't. I was so scared that if I escaped, he would find me, he would kill my family, kill me, whatever. So I was like trying to, work my way out. I was trying to play the character that he wanted me to while I was trying to like train myself to be strong enough to get out. That's really a lot of it, what I was doing.
Sure. Sure.
And then we were moving houses. His family was moving and I was going with.
Hmm.
And I used that opportunity. I was like, that's going to be the day when they're packing up. I'm going to escape. I'm going to get in my car and I'm just going to take off. And that's exactly what I did.
Good for you.
And I went home and my parents weren't expecting it. And I couldn't tell them exactly what was happening, but it clicked for them. Like just the way I was reacting, and I was scared, I was paranoid, locked myself inside the house, was afraid to go near the windows and doors, whatever. And so like that, I realized he wasn't actually going to do those things. He wasn't going to kill me. He wasn't going to harm my family or anything. Those were just words that he said to control me. So I started kind of waking up to that. But and I escaped right like at the start of the pandemic. It was June 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was a very weird time to escape. We were still kind of on lockdown. So like I had all that time of 2020 to just kind of like regroup, reintegrate back into the world, start to talk to friends again, talk to my family.
Yeah. How are things with your family? How are things with your family?
Pretty good.
Good.
It was like, it wasn't easy because I don't think they knew what was happening. And I was just slowly kind of giving them bits and pieces because I was also ashamed. I had a lot of shame coming back
Sure.
into it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't just want to like explain it. It was just a very gradual thing, but they could see that I just was not the person that I was growing up. And then I was slowly turning into myself again. And I really don't think it happened until like 2021 when I didn't move to New York. I think that's when I really was like, oh, this is me. But I had the ideas of the person I wanted to become and I was working towards that. So yeah, like moving on from it, I really was in this education mindset. Like I was completing my bachelor's degree. I was like, I want to go to New York. I want to go to NYU. So I was very focused on that. And I applied and I got in and I was like, this is a miracle. And I was like, that's what my life is going to begin. And I did. I moved to New York in 2021. Yeah. I totally forgot what like the question was.
Okay. No. That's good. All right. So you, so once you were settled in New York, what did you do? Did you start therapy? What did you do for healing?
Right. That is very important. I totally forgot to mention all that. Yeah. I got into therapy when I went home.
Okay, good.
And that's when I got my diagnosis with like I was seeing a psychiatrist. I got my diagnosis with ADHD, OCD, probably, spectrum disorder. I saw 3 different therapists and they all gave me different diagnoses. So,
oh, wow.
They were very similar, but, one was like, I think you're more of this. I think you're more of this. So I feel like that's also something someone needs to be aware about. Like, one doctor, if you really trust them and you think what they're giving you is right, but like I think other opinions are really important because
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, I started talking to someone and then I started talking to someone through NYU when I started.
Oh, good.
It's funny, I started talking to someone because I was having imposter syndrome.
I think a lot of us did. I think a lot of us did at NYU. Yeah.
And it just like led to, I got to just talk to someone because when you think it's over and something's not, I had the unthinkable happen. I ran into my abuser in New York. Yeah. Starting my second semester.
I wish I had known.
No, I mean,
yeah, just,
that's,
I know. Yeah.
I don't want anyone to think that, like some people say it, but I had a really good foundation.
Good.
Like my
Okay.
family, my
Mhm.
friends,
Good.
my work. I
Mhm.
told my boss about it, and then he was extremely supportive, and I
Oh,
didn't expect it.
good.
Like, he explained that he had similar situations. He was, like, this is your safe space. Your work is your safe space. You can come here anytime, like on my off days to do school, just to feel safe
So
for
great.
anything. So I had
Wonderful.
this really, really great support system. And I have family in New York. I have my aunt,
Okay.
uncle, I have my brother.
Great.
So it helped me get through that. And fortunately, and I really hope this is the end of it, like, I have not seen him since. I was running into my abuser a lot here, just like on the street.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I don't know why, but like, it to me, I knock on wood, I really hope that this is over, but like, thank God I had the support to get through that, because I mean, I immediately spiraled. It broke me. I was like, how did I got out of this? I shouldn't be facing this anymore, but it can come back. But I think just having a support system is really like, I don't think anyone can do this alone. And I would never
No.
expect anyone to do this alone. There are resources. If it's not through family, if it's not through friends, there are support groups out there. I found support groups online.
Yeah.
There are people you can call, there are people you can talk to. You'd be so surprised of how many people are going to be understanding because
Yeah.
they've gone through something similar.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So okay, I mean, it's hard to speculate, but like, why would he have come to New York? Like, was he following you or yeah, I know it's hard to speculate.
I I truly believe, just knowing him, that he came to find me. I don't know how, because I wasn't on social media, wasn't in contact, but he had to have found a way. And,
Yeah.
my family was like, maybe it's just a coincidence. He just moved to New York. He's young, whatever. And I mean, who knows? Maybe because whatever. But
Yeah.
when we were together, I did mention in the beginning, like, oh, I would love to live in New York someday. I've always wanted to live in New York.
Ah,
And
yeah.
he had never been to New York, and he was like, I never want to go. I wouldn't want to live there. Like, we're going to be here. He had a huge family. Like, they were immigrants, and they like all lived within the same neighborhood, very
Mm,
close by.
sure.
So his family was a really big thing to him to not
Mhm.
move away. So it just, to me, it seemed so unimaginable that he would just move, and I would run into him 3 blocks from my apartment. Like, it's, what are the odds? And then running into him multiple
Yeah.
times. It could be a small world, but
So
I
when was the last time? How long has it been since you haven't seen him?
a year.
Okay, that's
Um,
good. That's good.
I believe it was like July. It was last summer. I ran
Okay.
into him. He saw me, and I felt like he was following me. I eventually got out. I
Yeah.
escaped. I didn't want to go home. That was the thing. I didn't want him to follow me
Yeah.
home because I wasn't sure if he knew where I lived.
Mhm. Mhm. I
And then,
understand that.
yeah,
So,
there's no mistakes.
so you wrote a great article about this experience, and I know you go more into detail about that. So I'm going to include a
Yeah,
link to that in the show notes because I think it's really important that people read it
thank
because you were so candid about that experience. So from there, what have you learned from this experience?
you. A lot.
Yeah.
I wish I could just say that. No.
No, it's a really broad question. Well, what I'll do is, what would you want others to know about emotional abuse? Like, say someone is like completely clueless about emotional abuse; they don't know anything about it. How, what knowledge do you have that could potentially help others know, like, spot it and know more about it?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think the main thing is, I want people to know that it can happen to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I say I have ADHD, and stuff. That is not the reason why this happens to me. It's not the reason why it happens to anyone. It can happen to anyone. It can happen anytime. It can happen when you least expect. Like, the same reason why people always wonder how people join cults. Like, how do you get into that? That you don't see is, it's brainwashing.
Yeah.
And emotional abuse is that. So whether you're experiencing it, there is a way out.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way to overcome it. There is a way to heal. And people who are witnessing it, I feel like it's really important to step in and say something.
Yeah.
A lot of people now saying like, oh, I saw that things were off, things wrong, but I didn't want to say anything. And it's like, I don't blame them in any way. Because even if they did probably approach me, I probably would have denied it, which is a lot of thing that people do. But
Yeah.
a big thing in my article was I was saying that when I started researching it myself, I realized how like domestic violence cases went up during the pandemic because people were trapped at home and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And just how common it is. But it's like, when I said that I felt like I was the only one experiencing it is because I was not hearing about it. I didn't realize how common it was.
Yeah.
And I feel like now more than ever, we need to have these discussions. We need to talk about it. I tried to get a restraining order. It was denied.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have enough evidence. Like,
so
it's really, the point is,
I was just so upset when I read that. I'm so sorry that happened.
No, it's okay. And like, I'm safe. I'm okay.
Good.
But the point is like, we need to talk about it more to realize, that this is a very real issue. It's happening. It could be small. It could be big. Like, we can't really gauge it. We can't put like on a scale. We can't measure it.
Right.
If it's happening, period. We need to talk about it. We need to have better resources to help people escape, to help people have, to protect their mental health, to talk to someone, anything. Like that's why I felt like I was like, okay, I can't ignore it. If I had the situation, I need to speak on it because I don't wish it on anyone. I hope, I really hope that me speaking on it, now that I feel comfortable doing so, could actually benefit other people.
I really hope so. And that is the whole mission of this podcast. And I'm so glad and grateful that you were comfortable enough to share your story because there's still a lot of people out there who aren't comfortable. And I understand that. This podcast started from, an unpublished article, and someone said what you just said to me. Like, I hope that this information will help someone out there someday. And I find that slowly it's making an impact, but it's still a very new podcast. So that's why I'm so grateful that you are here and you told your story, because every story is important. I know that's cliche, but it's true.
No, thank you. No, becoming a writer, the whole thing was like, I was a storyteller, but I was like, everyone has a story and I want to write everyone's story. And you're doing the same thing. And when you started your podcast, I remember I was like, yes. And I was very excited. And then, now being a guest on it, I'm like very grateful. I mean, I'm very honored to be.
Oh, I'm so glad, because every guest is so welcome, and it's so hard to know if I am making an impact. And I'm so happy to hear that. And yes, as you know, storytelling is very important to me. And it was actually in graduate school, not that, I had done some podcasting previously, but it was really in graduate school that I started to see that this could be just a different avenue for me. Of course, I'm, continuing to write, but I think this is just such a great medium of storytelling, because I told you, I've spoken on the podcast about what happened with the unpublished article. Whatever happened with that website, they own the article. So I can't write about this right now. Yeah. So I'm grateful that I can tell these stories through a podcast, because they need to be told. So are you comfortable sharing ways that people can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like the best way to connect with me is probably through LinkedIn.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. I'll include your LinkedIn in the show notes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I have a writer's portfolio, but it's also featured on LinkedIn. So like, I feel like LinkedIn is just a good way to like find me in general.
Great.
Because I post all my articles on there and stuff too. So it's just a good platform.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Sadie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you so much
podcast.
for having me, Sarene. I'm very happy to share my story and
It's my
to
pleasure.
just speak with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you once again for listening to my conversation with Sadie on Emotional Abuse is Real. If you would like to connect with Sadie, I've included her LinkedIn information in the show notes. I've also included a link to her writing portfolio, which is where you can access the essay she wrote about her emotionally abusive relationship. If you would like to share your emotional abuse story here on the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out at hello@sereneleads.com, at our Facebook page, Emotional Abuse is Real, or through Instagram at Serene Leads Writes. Please note that this podcast should not be used as a substitute for professional mental health services. If you are a victim of emotional abuse and need help, please call or text the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988 or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can also text START, START, to 88788. Once again, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you can, please support us through our Buy Me a Coffee page. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.